What I saw out there was better than I could have hoped for in many ways. Guten gardening, everybody! Well, this is one of the harvests that I was truly worried about this season. For those of you that don't know, we don't actually grow corn here at Guten Gardening any longer. Instead, we save this for our community garden, our allotment garden, because we've had really bad results here and it takes up so much space that we just don't have the room with everything else that we're doing here at Guten Gardening. When I say we've had bad results with corn, I should clarify that. One year our corn looked great, and right before it was ready to be harvested, raccoons came in and destroyed everything. Probably the work of one or maybe even two raccoons. We had another year where we actually got a decent amount of harvest that we were able to freeze, but for the most part what we've grown here instead of sweet corn has been Huitlacoche. And while Huitlacoche is delicious, and if you haven't seen our video on Huitlacoche, that corn smut or corn fungus, you should definitely check that out. We aren't really trying to grow Huitlacoche, we're trying to grow sweet corn. Well, last season we had a pretty good amount of production at our community garden spot. We grew a couple of different varieties of corn. One of them was this beautiful white and lavender, like white and purple corn. But a problem arose with that corn, and that is that it was pretty tough. And so you've probably experienced this before if you leave the ears on too long, or if they're cross-pollinated with something to make them a little bit, I don't know, starchier, a little bit tougher, then when you're eating it, it's not as sweet, and it's a different kind of, I would say, unenjoyable texture to the corn. So this year we made a change. We bought 3 different varieties of corn, and each of those varieties are ones that are supposed to be able to be planted next to each other and still remain sweet and still get good production. And so let me get now to the point where I say why I was so worried about the corn this year. One, it's been an incredibly dry summer for us, and so the consistency of rainfall has not been there for the corn. And as we got a couple of weeks into the growing process, I had to go back out and reseed a whole bunch of the corn because about half of it didn't germinate. So you want to talk about being worried about what we're going to get produced by our corn. We're a couple weeks into the growing season and I have to go back out there and replant half of it. That was a concern. We also had a couple of vacations this summer when I wasn't able to be out there consistently watering, and so we were reliant on the natural rainfall. And as I said, it's been a bit spotty here in Zone 5 Wisconsin this season. So I had some concerns about whether or not we'd actually end up getting a decent corn crop. What I can tell you is that when I finally was able to get this harvested, and this was just 2 days ago, what I saw out there was better than I could have hoped for in many ways. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the harvesting, showing you some of the corn that we got out of there. It's beautiful, by the way. Most of it has developed quite nicely. We see quite a few of them with the last little bit that hasn't quite developed. But if you take a look at the corn here, this is absolutely wonderful. And when I went out there and started harvesting it, what I noticed was that each of the varieties, we have a yellow variety, we have a bicolor variety, we have one that's more white than yellow. Each of the varieties performed pretty nicely. I would say that my yellow here is probably the sweetest and probably produced the biggest overall and most consistent ears. But what I also noticed as I was harvesting this is that I only found Huitlacoche in one spot toward the bottom of one of the stalks, and it was no longer any good because the galls had already opened up, and so you don't want to eat the Huitlacoche when it's at that stage. So in terms of being successful, I would say the Huitlacoche didn't happen so much this year. So one of the reasons why I think we didn't get Huitlacoche like we have in the past necessarily, or one of the reasons, is that there weren't as many big storms. I think we had one, and it was before it was established to the point where it would blow over. So our corn survived that pretty well. Here's some of the bicolor. You can see the yellow and the white there. in this corn. So I got out there, and as I'm harvesting this, I'm realizing that a lot of the stalks had 2 ears on it, and both ears were pretty well developed, because if everything's not going to germinate, we need to get more corn somehow. And the end result of that harvest was over 100 ears of corn. And because I had to go back and replant, that means that I have quite a bit of corn that is just now getting to a stage where it's ready to be harvested. And I'm not going to be planting anything else in that area for fall, like that corn area. So I have time now for it to continue to develop, and hopefully we should get, if I were estimating, maybe another 40, 50 ears. So about 150 ears. It's not ideal, so don't get me wrong, but it's still better production than what I initially thought we might get. And if, 80%, 90% of the corn is really nice like this, then we're in great shape. And what I can tell you is this corn is also really sweet. I've already been taking care of, and I'm going to show you this in just a second, I've already been taking care of preserving some of this, so I want to do that pretty quickly once you've gone ahead and pulled the ears off of the corn. But none of it is tough, none of it has that terrible texture, and it's all really nice and sweet. And so let me show you right now how I'm preserving this corn. Of course, I'm going to leave some of it in the fridge on the cob, because there's nothing quite like eating corn on the cob. I remember some pictures, I'm confident. Let me see if anybody else has this memory, but some pictures, maybe cartoon images of people sitting there eating corn with the butter pouring down their arms. So this doesn't need butter, this doesn't need salt. This is amazing as it is. But here's how I go ahead and preserve my corn, and I do this based on what I've read through some of the extension offices. I'll put a link to the Minnesota extension office so you can see exactly what procedure I'm following here. But I take the corn, I husk it, I go ahead and pull off the silk from it, and then I'm going to boil this for 4 minutes. I blanch it for 4 minutes, according to the extension office, and then I take it immediately out after 4 minutes of boiling and put it into an ice bath for about 4 minutes. I want to cool it down completely so it's not continuing that cooking process. And then there are a couple of different options as to how we cut this down. Traditionally, I've cut it down with a knife, just right down the side, and then I take the knife and I scrape back up to get all of the stuff from the inside of the kernels. How many of you do that? Do you just cut it? Do you scoop it back and get some of that sweetness from inside? I definitely prefer to scrape the cob after I've gone ahead and cut everything off. Another option is, and it's only 10, 15 bucks, but you can buy one of those tools that's specifically made to remove the corn kernels. And it's a pretty simple process. They actually have 2 different blades on there. One of them, if it's up, will help cream the corn. You certainly don't have to. It actually makes it a little bit more challenging to get the corn off if you leave that up, but that becomes a one-step process. So I don't know which one you prefer. I still kind of prefer the knife in the sense of just feeling like I'm doing that work, but the tool for this is super easy as well. And then I take a freezer bag, and typically I put about 2 cups of corn in each freezer bag. And so far, I've been able to preserve about 23 quart bags worth of this sweet corn. And that's so far. I still have some more corn that I need to take care of. It's not a really long process, and the payoff for it is some absolutely delicious meals as we go forward. I'll tell you this, sweet corn may not be the most nutrient dense food out there, but when it comes to summer food, it is absolutely a delightful taste. One of my favorite tastes for sure. It's really funny because we are so late in the season and we didn't get that early production from the corn and had to go back out and replant. When I was out harvesting from the community garden spot, another gentleman who's gardening over there said to me, "Oh, some sweet corn. Mine's been going for a long time." Well, it's kind of a nice end of summer bonus here to be getting sweet corn right now. Yeah, it's late in the season, but we still could be in a couple weeks getting even more. So I was worried about the corn. I wasn't sure how it would turn out. And I gotta say, for as tough of a growing season in terms of the weather as it's been, I'm very pleased to see that we got some delicious corn. How about some organically grown corn from your own garden in the middle of the wintertime to make you think about the next growing season. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video, found it informative, and I hope you're out there enjoying the fruits of your labors in your garden. If you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.